So as a Grixis player, I know the removal suite out of Grixis is good against Affinity. Do you like the Madcap experiment here as the win condition, or does that, does that matter?
It lines up really well against Etch Champion, which can be a pretty big problem for the Grixis decks. It doesn't line up as well against Inkmoth Nexus. So as long as you can cover Inkmoth Nexus, if you experiment for Empyrean, you can make it really hard for the Affinity player to win.
Todd starts off on Serum Visions. Now, in a traditional Grixis control deck, what would you see in these as your win con, say, instead of a Madcap experiment?
Snapcaster Mage. Attack for 2 10 times.
Okay, Todd hasn't cut those, fortunately. But I guess there's less, there's almost no thought. There's fewer discard spells, a couple fewer kill spells as well.
You generally close games the fastest when you cast Tassiger or some Delve Threat, so those are the stuff that Todd has cut in order to cast these Madcap experiments.
Okay.
But I mean, Madcap Experiment and Empyrean, that should close a game pretty quickly itself.
So that makes sense. Instead of the Delve Threats, he's replaced the Delve Threats with the combo.
Yeah, he's got a couple Tassigers in his sideboard. One of the better cards against Affinity out of the Grixis decks, it's actually been Spell Snare, which basically nobody plays anymore. Todd not playing any.
Turn for Peter is a Springleaf Drum and 2 Ornithopters, which could ramp him up to 3 mana here on the second turn. Todd just leaving up 2. Had Jacevin's Prodigy but declined to play it. We'll see why in a second, I suppose. Cranial Plating and an Equip from Peter. And Todd will Fatal Push down the Ornithopter, taking no damage.
And with Peter's start, it does suggest that he has another one of the Affinity Haymakers in hand.
Sure.
His start was just really slow. He didn't have any Mox Opals, so you got to figure there's another thing. And I like going for the Cranial Plating in the face of Open Manon because you still have a couple bodies laying around in the face of that Fatal Push.
Yeah, and on the first 2 turns here, Peter has played both Inkmoth and Blinkmoth Nexus. If Todd does have the turn 4 Empyrean, he's going to have to make sure he doesn't die to that Inkmoth plus plating on the board.
He has a lot of stuff in his deck that does help that. He has more Fatal Push. He has a couple Lightning Bolts. Kolaghan's Command is really good against Cranial Plating. Outside
of the Inkmoth Nexus, there is not a way in Peter's deck to deal with a Platinum Empyrean.
I believe a Steel Overseer Masterpiece showing up here. If it were a Ravager, it'd probably be a +1/+1 counter on it.
Steel Overseer here, going to cast Thoughtcast.
Thoughtcast, one of the better cards for Affinity against the 3-color decks.
Yeah, absolutely. And then makes Welding Jar. That's actually a card I like in this matchup as well.
Yeah, checks Todd for having Kolaghan's Command right now, but it does look like he has it.
This is with the jar on the stack. So with the jar on the stack, yeah, destroys the Cranial Plating and deals 2 to Steel Overseer. This card is so good against Affinity.
Oh yeah, very favorable exchange for Todd.
And the problem with Affinity is all these cogs and then a few payoffs. So when you leave them with only the cogs, like Peter's board is a Springleaf Drum, an Ornithopter, and a Welding Jar that doesn't do anything.
Yep. Big attack with Ornithopter.
Good, send him a message.
Todd will stay at 16.
Madcap Experiment is in Todd's hand. Does he have the land? No, he does not.
He's still doing all right, though.
Yeah, it's probably fine.
He has Snapcaster Mage for Fatal Push.
I mean, he can he can use the Jace, flip it, cast Kolaghan's Command again. Probably doesn't even have to use Madcap Experiment, but where's the fun in that?
Right. This is Grixis Madcap, all right? Give the people what they came to see.
Good, and Todd's going to do that. Snapcaster Mage casting Serum Visions. They're going to go find that land.
Those are spells. Get those out of here.
Both to the bottom. We want to see an Empyrean. You should have some time to put one together.
Peter's in a really tough spot here. Realistically, though, his deck doesn't present him with a lot of disparate lines of play. He's just got to determine which creatures to shove with.
We'll go ahead and activate. And swing.
And it looks like activate Inkmoth, pump it with Blinkmoth Nexus. Perhaps he's aware of the deck Todd's on.
And Todd takes 2 poison, as opposed to, you mean dealing poison instead of damage?
Right, though Todd still is at 16. Now with that attack, Todd's Infect and life total, they're kind of the same.
You see Todd passing again. He has these Jaces, which just not going to use for the time being. He's leaving up Snapcaster Mage Fatal Push instead, which I do like here. Another Thoughtcast from Peter. does have 4 artifacts. You see Darksteel Citadel hanging out there. He'll draw 2. It makes sense. I think he wants to Fatal Push away the Inkmoth Nexus so that when he draws the land for the Empyrean, there's no danger in tapping out.
Yeah, well, he would force the jar with the push.
Okay. Well, I guess he has to get through it somehow.
Yeah, you can regenerate from being pushed, apparently.
Here's Inkmoth Nexus. And an attack from Peter. Todd looks like he may have all his Snapcaster Mages in hand. Here's Vendilion Click. Going to be more mana efficient here. And I bet we'll see who he targets.
Get one of those Jaces
yeah,
out of there.
Matt himself can trade Jace for a new card.
Hopefully a land.
And Welding Jar will regenerate the Nexus. He did it land. It is Spirebluff Canal, so it may not be an untapped land. Signal Pass from Peter and Hope of Girapur. It's a 1-of in the main deck from Peter. This actually could do something here as well.
Well, you have to deal combat damage to your opponent with Hope, I believe. Or no, you just sacrifice it.
Yeah.
I got this unreasonably conflated with Zethrid Swarm. Yeah, you just sacrifice this. You would buy a turn, but Peter doesn't have lethal in the following turn.
Right, so you have to post. It's a thing where you hit them with the Hope of Girapur, and then they can't play creature spells until your non-creature spells until your next turn. So Peter can't actually use this to protect his Inkmoth Nexus.
No. He could turn off Todd's ability to interact for 1 turn, but he doesn't have anywhere near the closing speed to take advantage of that. If he's able to find another cranial plating, that changes that equation.
Spirebluff Canal and a swing for Todd puts Peter down to 16. There still has that Madcap Experiment. So with the Empyrean showing up, the only card that Todd actually cares about here is the Inkmoth Nexus. Now, Peter doesn't know that.
Mm-hmm. Drawn plenty of extra cards. We've seen 2 Thought Casts out of Peter, but hasn't found another Haymaker since he was hit by that Kolaghan's command. He's been trying to get it done with just the filler cards in his deck.
Some things I like, though, about Grixis in this matchup is that the filler cards are all pretty live here. Whether it's Snapcaster Mage, Kolaghan's Command, Fatal Push, even Vendilion Click, they all seem to play. Peter's going to triple activate. And for Todd Anderson, Snapcaster Mage Fatal Push on the Vault Skirt, on the Signal Pest.
Yeah, that stops a lot of extra damage here.
Yeah, there were been 5 flyers there for Peter. Todd really had to make that play.
Yeah, and now Peter can choose between 3 damage and 1 poison, or 2 poison and 1 damage. Even though he's animated the Blinkmoth Nexus, he can still use it to pump the Inkmoth Nexus instead of attacking.
Yeah, does he want to make the difference? Some poison and some damage, or
Actually,
all poison?
He can do a 2-2 split using Drum Ornithopter.
Sure.
Magic player.
He can split it a lot of different ways. We'll see how he wants to do it.
Or playing commander. I have 1 spot left for each before the event begins. Draft or commander will begin playing Magic immediately. Please see us in 5 minutes.
And looks like he uses the Blinkmoth to pump one of them. And so Todd taking 1 damage and 2 poison. Go back over to Todd.
Yeah, untaps that Spirebluff, and I also be able to Madcap this turn if he wants.
Hope of Girapur trades with a Snapcaster Mage. And we'll see if Todd's going to go for the Madcap Experiment. Here's land 5. He just says go. I suppose Snapcaster Kolaghan's Command is available. It's probably better than Empyrean.
Yeah, that's basically a game-winning play.
He's got one of his 2 Empyreans in hand, as long as he doesn't draw the other one. If he draws them both, he'll be very sad that we didn't see one hit the battlefield.
It only cost 8. Maybe he'll cast it.
A third Thoughtcast by Peter. His deck a full 4 Thoughtcast version of Affinity today.
Yeah, I do like that. If you expect a lot of 3-color kind of mid-range and control decks, Thoughtcast is really your best splash.
Yeah. 1 Galvanic Blast as a result.
Yeah, and on average, I think that Thoughtcast is just better than Galvanic Blast anyway.
Yeah, we'll see Affinity players. It's an either-or thing pretty frequently in the list. They're either 4 Blasts or 4 Thoughtcasts.
Yeah, it's hard to play just a ton of colored mana in this deck.
Two Inkmoth Nexuses. Nexi. Snapcaster Mage Kolaghan's Command. That's going to hit both of them. Yeah, that card continues to be ridiculous against Affinity.
Yes.
Both creature lands hit the graveyard. And now with the coast clear, I do think we're going to see Todd make the 8/8.
Good chance of it. Just has to not draw the second copy.
you just had to say it. Well, how about Jace then?
All right.
Well,
guess we'll start discarding these guys.
well, that was probably the worst draw you could have had. I like how Todd was even good on him for not even being phased. He just keeps playing.
Well,
I would have probably hit the table or something, but like his deck's stupid.
Guess we're attacking for 4. Your turn.
Well, he's got this 2 of Sea Beyond. Maybe we can find one of those and shuffle him back in.
Yeah, activate Jace, look for Sea Beyond, find a land.
There we go. That'll work. Oh.
And there's another Inkmoth Nexus for Peter.
I know. Todd at 4 poison. Sea Beyond? No, Fatal Push. Well, that's
pretty good.
fine.
That's
I
pretty
mean,
good.
It turns out even if he doesn't play any of the Madcap Experiment cards and he's just a Grixis control deck, that's a pretty reasonable matchup here.
Yeah. Grixis control can really put the hurt on Affinity.
Jace draw finds a land. I wonder if he's going to... Yeah, he'll discard an Empyrean and flip into the Planeswalker.
Not a very difficult choice there.
Well,
that one's a
I
pretty
don't know
easy
if I want my
discard.
opponent to know. If they didn't know I was on the deck, I'm not sure I'd want to...
This isn't really a matchup where there's interplay going on with the experiment.
Well, he could board in and say Dispatches.
Yeah, but like Todd's probably boarding them out.
Okay. Well, then maybe you do want to discard one.
Yeah, dispatch my 2/1.
No, you do want to discard one, so with the hope that your opponent boards in Dispatches if you're trying to bait him.
Exactly.
I like that. At least he's not going to discard the second Empyrean. That would be really sad. Peter still trying to do some work here with the lands. They're going to go ahead and block these Snapcaster Mages. Block and pump the... So that
double
one stays
pump.
alive. Yeah, Fatal Push, though, will take care of it. This is a difficulty. You've seen Peter go through 3 Thoughtcasts, and Todd have 3 uncastable cards in his hand, and Peter's still behind.
Mm-hmm. We've just seen Todd leverage Kolaghan's Command. It's just so good in this matchup.
Yeah, a 2-for-1 and then a 3-for-1 on the way back down. Arcbound Ravager here for Peter.
This one's a game changer.
Because it can put counters on the Inkmoth?
You can move things around that way. It's difficult to deal with Ravager, even destroying 2 creatures at a time.
So, Ryan, can Peter go for lethal here? Swings with Inkmoth.
3, 4, 5.
Yeah, he can just try to win right here. So Ravager up to 2, up to 3 for 3, up to a 4/4, up to a 5/5, throws its counters to Inkmoth. Does that work?
He smells
and
blood in
it
the water.
does. Peter Tubergen winning game 1 here.
You got to hand it to him for going for it there. There was a lot of open mana. He said, use your Jace to -3 for Fatal Push on a creature that already killed your Snapcaster in combat. I think you're dead. Really nicely done.
Huh. And if Affinity there is going to get the first game.
Notably, Platinum Imperium would not have saved Todd.
No, I mean...
See, Peter's reading it. No, I still would have killed you.
Well, but there's a different way in that Todd could have stopped pointing removal spells at any other card.
Well, he Jaced into one.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. So we go over to the sideboards. We'll start with Todd Anderson, now down a game. 4 copies of Ancestral Vision, 3 Disdainful Stroke, 3 Ceremonious Rejection, 2 Tasigur, 2 Kozilek's Return, a Liliana the Last Hope, and an Izzet Staticaster. So Ryan, this sideboard is stacked with answers to Affinity.
Yeah, Todd's bringing in approximately half of his sideboard here. Ceremonious Rejection is great, Kozilek's Return is great, Liliana the Last Hope's great, Izzet Staticaster is great, and you probably bring in Tasigur just to have that be a little bit leaner.
So we see 6 excellent removal spells. Do you want to back it up? So let's assume first of all that, okay, those 6 spells can come in, and yeah, the Madcaps and Empyreans come out.
Pretty easy.
Those are 6 there. Do you want to to have any of these Ancestral Vision then? You know, maybe cut Sea Beyond for it?
You could. I think that the mana inefficiency is better than something that takes multiple turns to come off suspend. You know, Todd might go that route. That's less relevant than the shift just in, you know, being a little bit leaner, having more interaction. If you have Suspended Vision on turn 1 and your hand is otherwise full of removal spells, you're in a pretty nice spot. If you top deck them in any of like the second, third, fourth turns of the game, they do get quite a bit worse in those kind of spots.
Yeah, I mean, you look at that last game. If those Empyreans and Madcap Assailants were removal spells, Todd probably would have walked away with that one.
Yep.
Looking at Peter's sideboard, 3 copies of Etched Champion in the sideboard. He actually had 4 Masters in the main and no Champions, so they are all coming out of the sideboard. 2 Dispatch, 2 Gearbur Aether Grid, 2 Thoughtseize, a Vandalblast, an Ancient Grudge, a Blood Moon, an Eidolon of Rhetoric, a Thalia, and a copy of Stain the Mind. There's actually some interesting ones here that you typically don't see out of Affinity.
Yeah, that's an interesting composition here. Good chance we'll be seeing Etched Champion coming in. Really good against Kolaghan's Command. Less good against some of the other stuff Todd has going on, but it's good against a high enough volume of the cards in Todd's deck.
Yeah, I do like that Todd has the Kozilek's Return as a potential answer to it.
Mm-hmm. And then Affinity generally sideboard's very light. So there's some cards that you could look for in some small number. Specifically, I'd be looking at the Blood Moon and or Thoughtseize.
It's been the Blood Moon kind of weekend so far.
Yeah.
Affinity, you see sometimes one of them in the sideboard and pretty in. Thalia, Guardian of Thraben.
It's fine.
I'm surprised it's in the deck, but if it is there...
Storm.
Okay, it's better against Storm.
Yep.
But the reason I'm thinking he might bring it in here is if you wanted a white 2-drop that's good against Storm, you wouldn't have picked Thalia, right? You'd pick the 2/2, what is it? They can't play more than one spell.
Aethersworn Canonist?
Yeah, the Canonist.
Yeah, so it's 4 more matchups.
Right, so if you're all you wanted was a 2-drop that was good against Storm, you'd play Canonist. Since he's put Thalia here as well, I assume there's other matchups he wants it for.
That makes sense.
And this might be, you know, a Serum Vision Snapcaster deck's not a horrible idea to play it against.
It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's not great.
I hear your reasoning. It certainly makes some sense.
We'll see whether it goes toward it.
Thalia can be better against specifically the Merchant Scroll version of Storm if they have to go tutor up and answer.
Okay. Yeah, that's certainly true.
Of course, you know, Canonist makes it so they have to wait some time anyway. They can't combo you that turn, but you get to at least like use the Echoing Truth on your opponent's turn. You wouldn't have 6 mana laying around to play it through a Thalia.
Sure. So new to the SCG Tour this year, we have our Infinite Challenge. We talked about our schedule earlier today. Ways to get a playmat if you're looking to get a playmat on the weekend, but maybe not interested in the format of the main event or can only make it out for part of the weekend. We have the StarCityGames.com Infinite Challenge. So we have you can sign up for these Infinite Challenge events by themselves all weekend. We also have our $80 2-day package, which includes entry to every challenge event during the weekend, gets you the playmat, and you can take advantage of our expanded side event schedule in this package. So tournaments in every format. You can find out more and register at starcitygames.com/schedule.
All the Magic you can play. Great way to spend a weekend.
Todd on 6 here for the second game. And make that 5. Nothing he can do on that one. For Todd Anderson, we actually haven't seen too much of him on the SCG Tour this year. However, for the 31-year-old, originally from Alabama, now living in Roanoke, Virginia, he's got the most open top 8s of anyone on the SCG Tour with 31, including 6 wins.
He's going to need another top 8 before he turns 32 here.
Yeah, as the first, I believe our first player to pass his own age in top 8s.
A lot of youngsters, but the 31-year-old makes it first.
Keeps on 5 with a scry to the bottom, and we're underway for Game 2. Peter, yeah, Todd on the play here. I was going to say he lost. I keep thinking Todd won the first game, then remembering, no, wait, he didn't.
Yeah, it's almost like we watched 2 games.
Yeah. Welding Jar, Mox Opal, Memnite, Thoughtcast. Yeah, Affinity's nice.
Not a bad start.
Turn 1, play a bunch of cards and draw 2. Turn 2, do it again. Todd says go. Now he does have at least one Kolaghan's Command that he's building up toward here.
Yeah. Peter does have that early Welding Jar, though. Protects him a little bit against that. If he could make a big play here and not get hit by Ceremonious Rejection, he'd be firmly in the driver's seat.
And you see Todd's hand, no more lands. He does have Snapcaster Mage, Fatal Push, Kolaghan's Command, and it looks like basic Island. So his hand's very good for a 5.
Yeah, these are solid holdings.
Etched Champion's going to be the play from Peter.
That one's scary.
Yeah, so Todd does not have the Ceremonious Rejection. There's 4 artifacts in play. How's he going to get rid of this?
Kolaghan, or Kozilek's Return out of the sideboard. That's kind of the answer he's looking at. Theoretically, you destroy every other artifact or down to this and one other.
Yeah, you almost need a card like Vandal Blast, I think, to pull that off. And Todd's going to Fatal Push the Memnite.
When it's the Affinity player that mulligans a lot, sometimes you can Kolaghan Command, you destroy their Opal, kill their creature, have a removal spell for their creature land, kill it, but you need a lot going on for you, and they need to be struggling.
Remember, the Etched Champion here has protection from all colors, so Todd can't make the Kolaghan's Command play of 2 damage and destroy an artifact, even though it would take Peter off the 3rd artifact. Just doesn't work in the right order here.
Yep, got to be able to target it when you cast.
Todd draws a 4th land. So land, Snapcaster, Kolaghan's. That's what he has here. Peter will continue to develop the board with Arcbound Ravager.
This is a great 1-2 punch for the Affinity deck. You know, the Ravager makes it so you can't realistically Kozilek's Return away the champion anyway.
Right, and how good have these Thoughtcasts be? This is the 2nd one for Peter this game. Game 1, we saw him resolve 3 of them. These,
it's just excellent.
Yeah.
Todd's entire game plan is predicated on trying to leverage powerful 2-for-1s, and the deck he's trying to do it to is just doing that for 1 mana.
Peter's are instant. You know, Ancestral Visions at least waits 4 turns.
Kolaghan's Command costs 3 mana.
Yeah.
Snapcaster Mage costs 2+.
Vault Scourge, the play from Peter. So good. He has presented targets now for Kolaghan's Command.
So that the Ravager can eat them.
Well, I would assume that Todd would try to destroy the Ravager and deal 2 to the Vault Scourge. But it's fine. Peter has answers.
So Peter now, he has all of his mana tapped, so he can't activate a creature land if he finds himself in a pinch. I wonder if Todd, if it was possible, he would love to be able to find a way to destroy the Welding Jar, try to find an opening
Todd
with
has
that champion.
chosen Destroy Mox Opal, deal 2 to Arcbound Ravager.
Well, if the Ravager wants to just survive, it's got to eat 2 artifacts, right? You probably just sacrifice the Opal itself, but this play here, it's going to cut Peter off of some artifacts.
Question is whether or not he wants to... Yeah, and he'll actually then still sacrifice the Opal to the Ravager, and then sacrifice the Ravager to put counters on the Etched Champion and swing for 4. So Peter just, rather than trying to keep anything else alive, just decides that his plan's going to be Etched Champion.
Yeah, and it's a really good one.
Yeah, now out of range of Kozilek's Return.
Todd doesn't have any way to just make Peter sacrifice that.
Does he have a 7-cost colorless creature for the Kozilek's Return?
Unfortunately, he has an 8-cost one.
Okay.
It's called Platinum Empyrean, but I don't think he's going to cast it.
If he casts it, though, it would set off the Kozilek's Return, right?
I believe you are correct.
Wow, okay. Well, now we have a line. He's got to do that before he's dead, though. I don't know.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
That'd be a nice way to win a game.
That would be very satisfying. Affinity, if you're making 8 land drops against Affinity,
oh boy.
I think you're winning some other way.
If you have your 8th land in play and the game's still going, then you're good.
It's because you found some other solution to the champion already.
Swing here for 6 from Peter. Todd's hand, Snapcaster Mage and an unknown. He will take the full 6, go to 8. And Peter adds Signal Bust.
It's looking to be lethal on the following turn.
Sure.
Champion unchecked by itself does it in 2. I think Todd has Snapcaster Kolaghan's command for the next turn, but there's still no clear line against the champion. If he's left in Madcap Experiment, and he
that
can
could work.
Get an Empyrean on the battlefield, that does something.
Draws Terminate. Yeah, but you'd have to really draw it next turn. There's a 2-turn clock.
Absolutely.
But you're right, Empyrean would fix things. Inkmoth activated, or Blinkmoth rather. Snapcaster Mage from Todd on Kolaghan's command. It's going to, well, meet a stubborn denial. That's going to do it. Peter Tubergen 2-0 is your winner over Todd Anderson.
That game 1 was really impressive stuff.